Welcome to another episode of Confidence Factor Talks for Men. I'm one of your co-hosts, Lamont Gwynn, and I am in the building. I'm here too with my brothers on my, how to do this? Right there on the side, right? Bobby B and Darian Hill. Welcome to the show, everybody. We have a great conversation. We're going to do part two of Unleash Your Riches. What would you do for $1 million? What would you do with $1 million? We're so happy to have you here this evening. So just a couple of housekeeping notes. First, if you like what you're hearing and you're jiving what we're saying, just put a little heart level in your comments. I just did that wrong, right? Heart level in the comments. Just say heart level. If you're watching this on the replay, put a hashtag heart level. But just let us know that you're here. Let us know where you're calling it, where you're viewing us from. And, you know, we are here because we do what we say here in Confidence Factor, have those heart level conversations that lead to transformation. We're going to have one of those tonight. And I can't do this show by myself. That's why I have my brothers to the, I don't know, is it to the left of me, to the right of me? But that's why we're here. So welcome to the show. Welcome, Darian. Welcome, Bobby. What's going on, fellas?
Oh, man. What's going on? Hey, I don't think it's in the right or the left. I think it's in the circle.
In the circle. There you go.
We are brothers in the circle, man. Lions here in Confidence Factor. And as my brother Lamont said, we have heart-level conversations that need transformation. And imperfect conversation. Sometimes we mess up. But you know what? One thing we're going to do is always show up. Right, and sometimes we're going to show up imperfectly, and that's cool too, because life is about growth. Life is about failure. That's giving us feedback. Life is about temporary defeats, but it's about you continuing to move forward. It's about not taking yourself too seriously, but still showing up every day, having fun, enjoying this game called life, and that's what we're here to do. And I'm honored to have the great Bobby B with us, the alchemist, as always. What's going on, Bobby?
Man, just excited, brother. I'm just excited. You know, I think about a lot of times when people say like, oh man, it seems like I always go through this. This happens to me all the time. You know, it's so weird because I found myself recently in a situation where I said, man, I've seen this before. This is like deja vu. But you know, instead of me looking at the situation and saying, oh man, damn, why me? All this reading and development, I feel strapped, man. I feel like I got like guns on me, bro, like mental guns. You know, and so I think the conversation that we're talking about tonight is going to be a powerful one because we're talking about money, which influences everybody's life, right? I had a buddy used to say, money's like a salt shaker. You sprinkle it on anything and make it a little bit better, right? We're going to be talking about money tonight, and we're going to be talking about who you need to become, right? To be able to face those situations, because situations in life going to happen. Yeah. But I feel like I'm the right guy in the right place at the right time to handle these situations. And that's a great feeling, bro. That's a great feeling. So that's what I got going on, bro. That's what I got going on right now.
And I love what you're saying because that's really the second part of the conversation. Last week, in part one, we talked about what would you do if you got the windfall of $1 million, right? We talked about the lottery. And, it's kind of playing in the conversation that people tend to have. Like, man, if I won $1 billion, what would you do? And we really talked about some of the specific things you would do. I think this call and this conversation we want to take into a different direction. And I alluded to it last time. And the context was that oftentimes, well, not oftentimes, but there's a stat that shows, and, different people have different statistics, right? 70 to 95% of the people who win the lotto actually lose it within the first 5 years. And we didn't get a chance to go deep dive in exploring why that is, but we did talk about the fact that a lot of the people don't necessarily have the state of consciousness, right? They haven't developed themselves to be able to maintain that level of income. They don't realize that their mindset, right? Their mindset is going to always predict what level of physical results that show up in their life. And if the physical results get bigger than their mindset, guess what happens? They self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. So one of the reasons we know that people lose it is because and I think Moody said it. Wayne Moody says, "Hey, whatever you don't manage, you will lose."
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just about managing in terms of money. It's not just about managing the actual physical money. That's part of it. It's managing your mind.
Mm.
And that is a conversation we're going to have today, because I think so many of us in our lives have had riches in our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have had our version of the $1 million. Could be a $1 million relationship, could be the income, could be we were big status in the community, right? Maybe a great health and we end up losing it, learning to an education or spirituality, right? Maybe. And so we've had our own version of riches, but we end up not being able to manage it because we don't have the necessary mindset. And I want us to explore that tonight. You start off the discussion, Bobby, with being the right type of person. That's a big conversation to have. But before we do that, of course, you're welcome to Confidence Factor Talks, where we have heart level conversation, imperfectly heart level conversations, and courageous conversations that lead to transformation. And these conversations are the things that oftentimes people are afraid to have, but they are the needed conversations for your transformation, for you to self-actualize, to become, unfold a better version of yourself, so you can stop dealing with what I call the coping mechanisms, the procrastination, the stress, the self-doubt, um, the lack of belief, those things that hold us back from truly seeing and unleashing our full potential. And so here in Confidence Factor, each one of us as entrepreneurs, at some point in our journey, went through what we call the lid, right? We had some sort of moment in our life where something happened, defining moment happened. We had a loss, we had a defeat, a temporary setback, as we can call it now. But the way we looked at that temporary setback wasn't a temporary setback, right? The way we viewed it might have been different. And so we all dealt with it later. We got to places of loneliness. We felt isolated. And at some point, some of us felt like we didn't even matter. And I know there are a lot of people in life who can relate to those emotions. On the outside, everything looks good. But on the inside, you're dealing with stress, you deal with anxiety, you deal with overwhelm, you deal with a sense that I don't matter, I don't have any value. I'm feeling incongruent in my life. Things outside look good, but you feel a sense that something's still not right. There's something not right with me. Not even just not right, but maybe just not right with me. And a lot of men are dealing with these feelings and emotions, and they don't know how to be able to transform that. They don't know to, find people that can celebrate them and support them through that conversation. That's why we put together this community to really start to have those conversations, right? To start to create a bridge for other guys who, are going through that process, like we were going through that process in some point in time. So our mission is really simple: to empower the lives of over 5 million men, to be able to pursue their passion, to keep going through the journey of life as you deal with different obstacles, to have this thing called confidence factor. That's the thing that you want to gain, that identity, to be able to move through life's obstacles. And, we believe in a SMART principle here at Confidence Factor. Number one, we talk about self mastery, right? That is the core principle and foundation of everything that we do. We know that life is about self mastery, life is about mastery itself. And self mastery is one of the hardest works that you'll do, but it's the most important work that you'll do if you want to build any sort of success that sustains, and success in different areas, whatever you define as success. And of course, then we have accountability, right? A lot of times we set particular goals, but the goals that we reach are not just the goals that we want, but the must in our life. And to be able to have those higher standards is to also have other people there in your corner to support you, to push you, through a lot of the obstacles that you're facing. And then last but not least is resourcing and tools. Like, you want to be able to have those resources, those tools necessary, so you can up level your knowledge, which is the first part to mastery. You need to get the knowledge, right? Without the knowledge, then you can't apply anything. So first you get the knowledge, which is stage one in levels of mastery, and then you continue to work with that knowledge so that it goes into your mindset and of course becomes part of you. So this is a conversation we're going to be having, and it's really fired up. I'm really fired up for this conversation, fellas. So yeah, let's talk about it. So I kind of set the context that it's about the person who you become. And Bobby, I kind of talked about people losing the money, and it's because they're not the type of person that can sustain. What does that mean for you when you say that they're not the type of person that can sustain that level of wealth? What does that mean for you? And where in your life have you seen maybe some examples of maybe you felt like, you know what, your mindset didn't match the specific circumstance?
Yeah. You know, and that speaks to specifically my story, right? You can look around and look at everybody else, but you know, you got to bring it home and make it personal, right?
That's right.
So, you know, with my story, you know, I can think about 2 times in my life. Okay, I'm you know, same guy, but 2 different characteristics, 2 different personality traits, 2 different types of ambition. I can remember starting out in real estate thinking, you know, I want to be a real estate investor. I want to make all this money. At the time, keywords were things like net worth, you know, things like that, right? And doing so well, you know, just reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and really having the ambition to grow financially, economically. And here's the thing, right? I did it. I got to a point where not only was I able to, you know, buy an Escalade, get my wife a car off the showroom floor, you know, so, you know, change my wardrobe. I can remember wearing the same 3 pants. I had one for work, I had one for church, and I had 1 pair of pants that I split between the 2. So only 3 pair of pants, and I had 5 shirts. You know, I couldn't see the same person twice in a week, you know, because I would overlap. But I was in that space, but things began to get better to the point where people began to, you know, I sat down, people asked me, what are you doing? How is your life changing? And I began to share that with them. You know, these people are making $30,000 a year. I'm teaching them how to make $10,000 or $15,000 in 30 days. Life was good. You know, you see me then, brother, I'm on top of the hill, made it into Forbes magazine, right? People in my neighborhood. The reason why I got into Forbes magazine, because people in my neighborhood were making so much money with me. They had friends in Forbes and was like, you got to do an article with this guy. That's how great it was. Then the 2008 crisis hit, and see, this is where, you know, you got to test the fire, right? Because what I didn't realize at the time, as that person, as that character coming forth, as that individual, I had strategies and techniques how to do a specific thing, but I thought I had arrived. We have this false impression that, you know, you make $1 million, life's over, you're good. You're good for the rest of your life. That's it.
Yeah.
So, you know, making it to that point where we have like $1 million net worth, we got so many properties, got houses, got cars, got cash coming in. And then when the rug got pulled from up under us with the 2008 crises, we saw what things were made of. I got a chance to see what I was made of because I folded. I folded, man. My one trick pony show was not working, right? So I didn't have the substance to sustain that which I obtained. So what that taught me was, here was my life lesson. Here's my life lesson. Lamont, here we go. Darian, listen. My life lesson at that point became, whatever you obtain, you have to be able to sustain and maintain. You want the BMW, you want the Mercedes, you can get it. But can you pay? It's not a $70 oil change anymore. At that level, it's a $400 oil change, right? And with the market doing what it's doing and gas prices at $4, I didn't have the ability to sustain that. I wasn't working on myself, building up my character, evolving. I was concerned strictly about the financial economic impact only. The other areas, relationships, and those areas weren't as sharp as the economics. So now you fast forward, like I said at the top of the show, I found myself being back in that situation again later on in life. And I'm like, how am I here? The difference is that this time around, I had been working on myself. I had been reading, I read 55 books in 1 year. But even when I read the 55 books, I think that was, back in the day. But even when I read the 55 books, I was still thinking tip, strategy, technique, not evolution, not transformation, right? And so somewhere along that line, I began to figure out that, the old me was not able to sustain and maintain, but the new me can sustain and maintain, because I realized that it's not just about making the money, reaching the destination. It's about who I become in the process, so that now when life's battles come at me, I can handle them a little bit better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, right? That's the one thing we say at Confidence Factor is that it's progress over perfection. Yeah, and we know you want perfection. We know you want to come out the gate, everything's perfect, and the raving fans, and there's a million people, all hail to the new company. That's perfect, right? That's nice. But realistically, we're gonna have to build this thing brick by brick. And so day after day, listening to books and audios, I know I began to transform. So yes, I still had the same situation appear in front of me on the screen of space, but now I'm looking at it through a different lens. I'm the guy that's thinking, I got this. I don't like it. And so when we talk about the 4 levels of competency, that's important because there's a such thing as being unconsciously unconscious. That's just when you don't even know what you don't even know. And that's where I was. I didn't even know what I didn't even know. Moving into that next phase of being consciously unconscious, we'll say, look, I don't know what the hell's going on, but I know something's going on, right? And I know I'm not prepared for what it is that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That gave me the permission to move into that 3rd level of competency, which is that consciously conscious. Okay, now I know what to do. Let me put one foot in front of the next. And then you meet these great people along the way who can help influence and guide and reassure the line of thinking, which strengthens you, gives you confidence, and gives you courage. Darren, you probably know this one. I know a great guy in Orlando that says life management is about what?
Mind management.
Mind management, right? So that's one of my brothers said that in Orlando. The guy named the professor used to say it all the time. Life management is about mind management. So I said, that's interesting. Then I hear Tony Robbins say this thing is 80% success is 80% mental, 20%, strategy. And then I hear Bob Proctor say this thing is 95% mental, 5% strategy. So, but all these various people I'm looking around me that are super successful, I'm saying, man, this is a mental game. This is a mental game. So it turns out I have been Mr. Miyagi because listening to so many books, going to so many meetings, talking to so many people, I didn't even realize I was changing. So same guy, 2 situations. I know a lot of people like to tell a story about 2 guys. One guy goes after the job, other guy decides to stay home. But I'm saying I'm telling a story about myself. Same guy, same scenario twice. One unprepared, one prepared. Nothing's perfect, but I feel like I was better the second time around. And I think that is what we're really getting at. That aspect of having a community, having a place where you can talk to other people and share those ideas and reinforce those ideas so that you can be built up in your confidence. That's what I have to say on that.
No, that show is powerful. That show is powerful. Hey, Lamont, do you have anything on that?
So while Bobby was talking, we got this comment that came in. Information without application is mainly motivation and entertainment. We must act. Faith without work is dead. So interesting because a lot of times people get into so much action that they don't do the inner work in order to even sustain what they're acting on. Right?
Yeah.
So you can, and I get that, I get that comment, but and this work, this inner work, it prepares you to act when it's time to act. Because, Bobby and I were having a conversation earlier, and then some situations people don't see you acting and they think you aren't in action.
Yeah.
But it all depends on what instructions you're getting. The instructions that a person gets may not be the same instruction for it's not the same instruction for everybody else.
Yeah, that's
right.
true.
And so that's my follow-up comment to that.
No, and I do want to challenge also. I want to challenge that statement because that's faith without works is dead. That is true, right? Yep. There's truth in what the person posted. I'm not even sure who it was. I want to acknowledge them.
And
Huh?
it doesn't show.
Okay. Yeah, but I do want to acknowledge him. But it is true that faith without works is dead. Absolutely. Right. And one of the things that we want to employ us to consider um, is that it's a be plus do equal have. Right. So it's actually being, becoming plus the doing equal to having, right? So yes, the person is right that just getting information by itself, and we know this from Think and Go Rich, information without application, right? Without applied, it's not power, right? You can
Right.
get all the knowledge you want. If you don't apply that knowledge, it's no power. So there's truth in that. And there's another level of conversation that we need to have. And I'll tell you a reason why. Because if it is true that hard work makes people rich, right? Then every construction worker, every person who's doing manual work would be wealthy and rich, right? So there's something else going on that we don't talk about. We repeat, hey, faith without works is dead, and this is true, and we must act, must act, must act. But there's a lot of people acting, but they're not acting in alignment with the thing that they want, and so there's a lot of people that's putting in a lot of hard work, but they have some limiting beliefs, and this is what we're going to get into. They have some limiting beliefs and a being state, a level of consciousness, and they have a level of traumas that's literally affecting their ability to receive the thing that they're actually working hard for, right? So they and sometimes on the physical plane they have to work so much harder to get the thing, is because they're not in vibrational alignment with the thing that they want. And when I say vibrational alignment, it's like this. It's like if you say, if you set, let's say on your GPS, you want to go downtown Orlando, right? The GPS is going to try to give you a route to downtown Orlando, but you keep driving like opposite to what the thing is telling you. So guidance is telling you, hey, I want you to do X, Y, Z, right? This is the fastest path to get to the thing that you want. But you're driving all the way around, going to Titusville and doing all this stuff instead of following this guidance, right? And that is going to lead you to the actual result that you want. Well, the problem is a lot of us are not listening to that guidance. We're working hard and hard and hard and doing things and not following our guidance or inner being or inner alignment, or inner assignment. And that's why sometimes we have to work so hard to get what we want. So there is a need for people to slow down and say, okay, is the thing I'm working hard for is in alignment with my highest being, is my highest self. That's the being state. That's the being state. Do I have any sort of limiting beliefs that I'm dealing with right now that's making me work so hard to override those limiting beliefs that we have? And so let me make it more practical. So we talked about the fact that most people lose their money within 5 years, right? From the statistic that shows for the lottery, right? And the question is why? And this is how I relate it. One example we know is in your house, there's a thermostat, right? And if that thermostat is set to 76 degrees, let's say your thermostat is set to 76 degrees. Now, outside is 90 degrees, and you open up the doors in your house. All of a sudden, the inside of the temperature in your house starts to rise because outside is higher than the inside. So, all the hot air starts to come inside your house. So it goes up. So what does your thermostat start doing? It's a regulator. So it starts to pump harder, hard to try to do what? To drive the temperature back down to 76 degrees. And so the only way that, you're going to be able to what? Change the true temperature, right, is by changing the thermostat, because a thermostat will always regulate what's happening within the environment. And so I use that example because that's happening with our mind. Oftentimes we say we want success or we want this, or those people win $1 million, but they haven't managed their mind. They haven't changed their mindset. They haven't changed their inner thermostat to be able to maintain that level of wealth, to be able to manage and sustain that level of wealth. And so it's important for people to understand that the reason why a lot of us are not getting the things that we want is not because we're not acting, it's because there's a force, there's a regulator that is working hard in the background to stop you from actually getting the things that you say you want, right? To stop you from getting the things that you say you want. And these could be stories that you've told in the past, right? These could be issues that you've dealt with, traumas or stuff you've dealt with in the past. These are the regulators, the inner thermostats that's stopping you from moving forward. And so the only way to be able to transform is to, one, become aware of these things and start to tell a new story, right? Start to reprogram your mind. Two, as the person says, faith without works is dead. Well, in the Bible, it also says to renew your mind. You got to renew your mind so that you have a new set point, so that you can actually have a different outcome point, right? You can maintain the things that you definitely get in life. So I just wanted to kind of share that, because I think that's a conversation that oftentimes people just say, but there's a bigger and higher conversation that we want to have here in the community, so that there is what I call success in alignment. Success in alignment. We're not just after success, we're after success and fulfillment. We're after alignment. And what does that look like? It looks like that I become the person first. I become the millionaire first that attracts the $1 million, right? Not necessarily that I just get $1 million and I lose it because my thermostat is set to $30,000 a year, right? So there's a whole conversation that we need to have. So what were your thoughts about that, Bobby?
This goes back to, one of the first things I learned, like when I first started, they were talking about one of my coaches was talking about an internal locus of control and an external locus of control, right? And it was powerful for me because when you talk about having an internal versus external locus of control, one mindset, right? Internal locus of control has you believe that you can control outcomes for yourself, right? You can, take a series of actions and have control. But when I used to deal with when I dealt with the depression, I used to think that there were outside forces sometimes that can control. They're keeping me down. The devil's doing this. So many different variables that it left you feeling like life is on a whim. How can I really make it? If the devil's stopping me, if they are holding me down, if this is going on, then how can you win? And so I really sat with that for a while. And I think that was important, especially for myself as it pertains to my story, because during the time when I was experiencing that 2008 crisis, I had that external locus of control. I was thinking that because the economy I wasn't thinking solutions. I was thinking victimization, something happened to me, and now I have to wait and there's nothing I can do about it. Versus the beingness of saying, I have an internal locus of control. There's other people who have found themselves in this situation and they got out of it. And you can, and I can too. You can too, right? That's a totally different mindset. And so for me, it was almost a mind flip.
Yeah.
Because now I'm faced with a situation where, well, what if nobody can hold you down? What if you can find a solution? What if you can make, a way out of this, right? So, going back to that conversation, information without application is mainly motivation, and the same is true. Once you get the information, you have to act on that. But I think there's that next level where we're talking about is that internal, that intuition, that guidance, that tapping into spirit that can tell you, make a left, make a right. I can remember times in my life where I can hear the divine telling me, make a left, make a right, slow down, stop, look over there. And I'm like, whoa, got exactly what I'm looking for. But, during that crisis period, it didn't feel like that. I didn't feel led. I didn't feel guided. And I think it was because I wasn't looking to feel led or guided. I was looking to feel, I was looking to place my mind with my feelings of woe is me. And so in reality, what happened was I yielded the outcome of what I expected. And so this is a big mind flip here. The beingness. If I am the person that has the ability to produce $1 million or come up with $1 million, if I did it once, I could do it again. If I believe there are external factors and I have to, hustle and scramble and scurry, then yeah, there will be a lot of people. There's a lot of people that works very, very hard. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of people who work very strategically and work with information, and they come from a place of The destination and the journey are one. I'm not, in my case, and again, I'm going to speak for me because I don't want to make it so general. You know, in my case, I was trying to get to a number. Getting to the number or getting in the area of the number or that net worth made me relax. To sustain and maintain, you know, you got to wash the car, man. You got to change the oil. You got to keep doing various things to keep it running. Yep. So this idea of getting the $1 million and then everything is okay is like buying that car and then leaving it or just not washing it and not changing the oil. Right. So what my transformation, my internal transformation was, this is where I get my saying, you have to play an inside game on an outside world. Mm-hmm. Because I realized as I look around, once I realized that about myself, obviously I did the common sense thing. I look at the people around me and I said, well, shit, everybody's working hard like me. And most of us don't have it. So that can't be the answer. Mm-hmm. Right? So now we move into this space with this internal locus control, or this playing this inside game in an outside world. Now it says, well, who do I need to be to sustain and maintain this type of lifestyle? Well, it says, well, you have to constantly be evolving. You have to constantly be learning. You have to be the student and the teacher simultaneously a lot of times. You have to be in a moment where you can share something with someone, motivate, inspire, inform, radically transform their life, and then move into another conversation 10 minutes later, and you're a total student and you don't know anything about what the person's talking about. That's an art form. That's work. That is the actual work.
That's the work.
Because if I have that mindset that nothing on the external can keep me down from what I'm trying to accomplish and do, the circumstances don't matter. It's just a series of steps and moves as the person I am to change that outcome. So I went the long way around, but I feel like I really wanted to take the time on that because for me, this was a damn revelation.
No, that's good. Because you just talked about the work. And I think a lot of times when people say faith without works is dead, they think it's actually only physical work. And I talked about this when we started. Self-mastery is the hardest work. Every book you read, every, self-development, marketing, everything, it'll tell you self-actualization, self-mastery is the hardest work that you're going to do. And the reason being is because what most of us don't realize is that we have a system, a survival mechanism that's not set up for success. It's not set up for us to thrive. Its only job and only goal is set up for our survival and our protection. It is not wired for action. It is wired for protection. And so self-mastery is being able to understand that there's a realm of self that wants to always stay within what's familiar and not venture out of familiarity. And you're going to be confronted with that. That's why people lose the $1 million. Because if your familiarity is $30,000 a year, the regulator will, hey, if the outside circumstance changes, the regulator is going to make you give that money away. It's going to make you make poor decisions, right? So that you can lose that money and get back to the state of $30,000 because it's uncomfortable with anything that's outside the realm of whatever's familiar. Mm-hmm. And so most people don't understand that the work is actually to raise your level. So, raise your level of self, raise your regulator's temperature, raise your level of belief, worthiness, of value to where you actually can say, yes, I'm deserving of the $1 million, because for many people, they want $1 million, but they can't believe themselves for $1 million. They don't believe themselves worthy of $1 million. As Wayne Dyer says that, I think he says that people don't get what they want. What they get is more of who they are, and who they are is what they believe. So we don't get what we want. And Oprah says this, we don't get what we want. We get what we believe. And so when we talk about the B plus duper you have, you can work a lot. You can put a ton of work in. But if you never address your belief system and address those limited beliefs that you're going to have, you're going to do a hard work on the physical realm. You're going to do a hard work to attain the have, right? Because your belief system is not in alignment with the thing that you say that you want. And that is the biggest revelation I've had in this journey. And the goal of all of us in this process of self actualization is to do that. And I'm going to share a personal story. I never shared this before. And this was a revelation I had recently. So I was talking to a colleague recently, and he kind of, said this to me, that he said, "Man, it's time, Darian. It's time. You need to unleash. It's time, right?" Because he's been watching me, and he said, you're doing some amazing things. I see you, but you can do so much more. And he said, you're being too humble. You're being too humble. That's what he said to me. And we talked a little bit more and explored it. And I revealed to him this story. So when I was a kid, I said to him, a lot of people look at me now, but they don't know what my backstory. So I want to share some backstory so people can understand where I'm going with this, with a B plus 2 equal half. When I was growing up in Antigua, I was the kid who used to run around with no shoes on, right? I used to play in the gutter in the not so great parts of Antigua, right? They would consider maybe the ghetto. I don't know if they use that in America, but we never really even call it the ghetto. We just, when you're a kid, you're just enjoying life. But I used to run around with no shoes on, walk around the street with no shoes on. I used to play in the gutter, and we used to make these little paper plate boats, and we used to float them down inside of the gutter. It was like a dirty water, but we had fun. We would play in the gutter, and my parents would hate us doing that because you would get this thing called wingworms. It's like worms that would mess up your skin, right? It's kind of like this disease, right? But we would do it anyway because it was just fun. So I came out of that environment, and I was always around kids who didn't necessarily have a lot of money, have a lot of great success. They would, we all came out of, quote unquote, what you consider to be the ghetto, right? And I was around that. Now, my parents, of course, educated people, always worked hard. They had the support of my grandparents, who were fishermen and hustlers. My grandmother was a hustler. When I say hustler, she used to go to the market, and she was a hustler. She used to sell products and fish and stuff like that. So because my grandfather used to be a fisherman, so she would hustle. She was a salesperson, man. She'd be out there grinding, getting it done. So they worked hard, and they provided an opportunity for my mom to get education. My dad, he got his education, and he started in sales, and he started working for a pharmaceutical company. And over the years, he rose in the ranks, and we ended up moving from what I would consider the area where I used to play in the gutter up in the hill. They call it Marble Hill. And so I wasn't in the valley anymore. I was up in the hill. And so we had this 2-story house. We went from 1-story house to this big 2-story house in the hill. My dad was the president of this particular company he started. He and some doctors started working together, and he started literally flying all around the world. This man going from humble beginnings, sales, and grew his company, and all of a sudden became this big shot in Antigua. And so for me, though, as a kid, that transition wasn't, I'm like, okay, well, it's nice. We got this nice house. But one of the big problems that I faced was I felt like I was being separated from the people that I knew. And if you understand something, if you understand this, one of the things that as human beings that we don't like is to be left out. We always want to fit in. We always want to stay with the familiar. We want to stay within the crowds of people that we already know. We want to stay within that familiarity. And I remember when I was growing up, the kids used to start calling me the rich kid. And I hated it. I hated being called a rich kid. Because the truth of the matter is that being called a rich kid meant that I was different. Being called a rich kid means that, oh no, they may not want to play with me. Being a rich kid knows that means that I'm ostracized from the group. If you understand human behavior and survival nature, back in the day, if you got ostracized from the tribe, you literally would die. Okay, so it's part of us to have connection, to be part of something, to fit in, right, and not stand out. We're conditioned for that. And so as a child, I didn't want to be different. And so what did I do? I started dumbing myself down. In high school, I would be the bad kid. I would try to get into fights. I would, try to act out because I wanted to look rough and stay tough. And, be bad. You know what I'm saying? And and that led me to actually repeating. I mean, here in America, they call it ninth grade and 11th grade. I repeated those classes. So I should have gone to school in 5 years. I actually did it in 7 because I need to prove that, listen, man, see, I'm a bad guy. Huh? I'm not one of them smart kids. I'm not one of them rich kids. I'm just like you. I'm bad. I'm rough. I'm from the hood, dog. Right? So that was what I was doing. That's the way I was expressing this belief, right? This thing, because I didn't want to be the rich kid, because being the rich kid meant I was different. So what I didn't realize is that I created a story and a belief about what it meant to be rich and what it meant to succeed and what it meant to start acquiring things. And as I transitioned to life, came here to the United States, and I started to have levels of success. In the back of my mind, there was always this thing: don't get too big, because you're gonna leave people, and then you're not gonna have any friends. Don't shine too bright, because then people are gonna not want to talk to you, not want to be around you, right? Don't get too successful, right? Because that's rich people stuff. Remember, you're just a kid that used to play with paper goats in the gutter, right? That's what we need to be. We need to just be able to talk to anybody. I don't want to leave nobody. I want to be able to talk to everybody. I want to be friends with everybody, right? And so because of that upbringing, it created a story. I had a story about what success and richness meant. It meant disconnection. It meant loneliness. It meant that I wouldn't have people who like me. It didn't mean that I would have any love for my friends. It meant that I would lose my friends. It meant that I was different. And that was painful for me as a child. So growing up as an adult, I wanted to separate myself from that. So as I've continued to rise in levels of success, I've somewhat held myself. That thermostat kicks in. As soon as I get more, that thermostat kicks in and tries to regulate me back down to, that kid that, came from running around with no shoes on or playing in the gutter and not really elevating to another level of my life, because being rich, that's a problem. Right. So I share all that to say this, and that's the first time I share that story, is because I want people to realize that there is such a thing. Like I said, life management is about mind management. You could have created some stories when you were a kid. You could have had some experiences when you're a child, trauma experiences as a child, that is shaping how you are expressing yourself today, right? Which is stopping you from showing up in a big way, in being more visible in your life, in promoting your business, in doing the things that you need to do to really be at your full potential. And so you could be somebody who has this unlimited potential to become a millionaire or billionaire, but you're playing at the level because of your mind or your stories or your decisions at only maybe $30,000 a year. And that's how it works. So I wanted to share that just to kind of give some context around why it's so important that you work on your mind, your belief. Why you need to understand the stories that we tell ourselves become the lens through which we express through life. So self-mastery is the most important thing that you work on, because all these things in the back of your mind, them stories from when you're a kid, are literally stopping us oftentimes from expressing ourselves in full measure.
Yeah, it's powerful, man. It's powerful, just like what you're saying, because even if you obtain that money, if you're still thinking and believing a certain way, like that thermostat, you get set back. You're gonna spend extra. You're gonna do this. You're gonna do that, because you're subconsciously trying to put yourself back into that familiarity that you're looking for. That's powerful. Lamont, what do you got to share with us, brother?
Well, two things. First, thanks for sharing it, Darian. But I think, and I think what you shared is the reason why confidence factor really exists, right? Because now you have a community of men that will lock arms with you, and no matter how successful you're gonna be, we all gonna still be there, right? We all still gonna be there.
Yeah.
And so I love that fact. But in the conversation, as we were having a conversation, it reminded me last week of the of the inspiration injection. It's better to be prepared for an opportunity not to have one than to have an opportunity to not be prepared. And a lot of times we think preparation is, we do a lot of times preparation. The question is, do you see preparation as the mind work? Right? A lot of times people look at preparation as the do work, and not the be work.
That's it.
And so, in preparation for that opportunity, for that success, for that next level, there's a lot of internal work that needs to be done. And that work usually isn't done in the eyes of other people.
Yeah, that's
right. You're not bouncing around, making, 7 posts a day while you're doing the internal work, because you know that this is the time for me to prepare for the launch. There's a lot that goes into a spaceship launch. A lot of preparation. But then when it's go time, it's go time. And that's when you see that blast of fire going up into the air, because of all the preparation that has been done prior to. And so that's really, that's what came up for me when you were having when we were having that conversation. The preparation is so important.
Yeah. So before the call, we talked about, the power of stories that, we oftentimes give meanings to things. So going back to my story is that one of the things that I gave a disempowering meaning for what it meant to be rich. And so the shift that I want us to take in the conversation for the rest of the time is that I remember Tony Robbins saying this. He said that whenever things happen in life, there are 3 important questions that you need to ask. Number 1, what does it mean? Number 2, what do you focus on? And number 3, what do you do? I wanted to ask you guys a question. Why do you think he says one of the most important ones is to ask the question, what does it mean? Why is that an important question to ask? And oftentimes, do we give the right meaning to things?
I'll start. So that's an important question, because we can literally, I'll tell you experience. So I recently had experience where a friend of mine texted me and said, "Oh, so you're not going to call me?" And I'm like, "Oh, my bad. I forgot." Well, you know that I have this and this and this and this. And I'm like, are we going to make this about the thing that you need? Or are we going to make this about the fact that I didn't text? Like, what we make it in our mind, there's some people who would have said, "Hey, you didn't text me, so I'm reaching out to you." Because in their mind, they made it mean, oh, he must have forgot. Oh, he must have fell asleep. Oh, he's got a million things going on, so I'm just going to text and say, "What's up?" But then you have the other mind that says, "Oh, they don't want to help me. I'm not that important. They're putting other things in front of me." Right. And so that question of what are you making it mean in your mind can actually can create a shift for you, especially if in the moments that you feel this, when you feel on edge about a situation, taking that step back and say, what am I making this mean? Is it really that bad? And yes, Rudy, I was taking my 30-minute nap. Exactly. And I don't want to be disturbed. But there you have it.
There you go.
So what are you making it mean? So that's a really, really important, powerful question, because if you do the internal shift, if you can change how you make things mean in your mind, that from negative to positive, you can actually grow. You can actually shift the outcomes of what you really want.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off that, as you're talking about what does it mean, right? Now I'm going to go and jump into what you focus on, right? Because it says what you focus on expands.
Right.
So if you're coming from a lens or a perspective like, oh, this guy doesn't care about me, or why does he always forget me, then that gets multiplied. You're feeding, inspiring, and charging energy. You're assigning energy into something. This is crazy now that you really don't want. Like you want to get help, you want to talk to the person, you want to jump on the phone, but instead of going with what you want, this is powerful because we do this in a lot of different ways. Instead of leaning into what you do want, let me just skip it because I'm more interested in getting to the goal. We're expanding on something that's probably non-existent. And here's the thing: we do it without any. This is crazy. We do it a lot of times without enough information. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know. So I can make up any listen. I can make up any story I want, right? So he said you could choose good, you could choose that. He said, look, if you don't know, just choose good. choose the highest and best thought, right? Oh, this guy's taking a nap, And if you got to really dig deep, maybe you do the inner jerk. You're like, hey man, I'm last on the totem pole. Like, making light of it, right?
Right.
So what we focus on expands. Where attention goes, energy flows, and that's the thing that you're multiplying. So that's why I want to talk about the focus part.
Yeah, no, that's powerful what you said, Bobby, because I didn't really even make that connection, but you're right. And I think this is part of the inner work, and this is part of the conversation. Going back to my story, what did I make being rich mean? Right? What did I make it mean? And what's interesting is I didn't just make it mean that became my identity. That becomes my story. So identity is the story we tell about ourselves. Because when I focus on it, I focus on it so many times, and I start to act out and be inauthentic in how I'm dealing with life now. So now I'm acting out this play, this drama of life, trying to navigate and, hey, no, I'm this particular way when I'm really not. So I'm living this false life now, right? Based upon this false narrative. Listen to that. I'm living this false life because of a false narrative. And so that meaning that we give, some of us are playing out a false narrative in our life because of some trauma or meaning or story that we gave to some situation that happened. Some of us are not talking to family members because of some false story or meaning that we gave to something happen. Some of us can't move forward in our life because we're still blaming somebody else, giving the meaning to this particular event, this failure, like it destroyed me. Oh, this event destroyed me, and we can't move forward. We're paralyzed in our life because of that story, that meaning we gave that particular event. And so, as you said, Bobby, once you give it that meaning, then that becomes your focus. Because I remember going back to another story real quick. When my first business failed, right? What did I say? I didn't say, oh, I had a failed event. What I made it mean was I am a failure. And I created an identity. So one of the things that Tony Robbins says is this, that in life, right, the greatest part of your psychology, right, the most powerful force in your psychology is to be what? Congruent with your identity. And so if I made an identity that I'm a failure, now what am I focusing on all the time? Failure. And what am I trying to avoid all the time? Failure. Yeah. And so how do I go through life? Trying to avoid failure. And so people have to understand that the meanings that we give to events that happen to our life literally shape the expression of our life. And until you literally re-examine how you gave a story or meaning to something, you can be living a false expression of life in your relationships, in your occupation, in the way you express. You can be dumbing down the millions of dollars that you should be able to manifest because it's a false story that you told. It's powerful, man.
Yeah, it is. It is. No, I think about like kids. They said if you want to understand, you really should become like a kid, right? Because kids have the vast imagination. A kid does not get dressed up with a Superman costume and says, "I'm going to go out and get beat up by the villain." I mean, this is not what is happening. They're getting dressed up like Superman because they intend to go save the world, right? So it tells you where your thinking is. Right. And so one of our coaches, what did he say? Right. Wherever you are, your mind got there first. Yeah. Wherever you are, your mind got there first. So, we living congruent and living what people refer to now as, their best life or a better version of themselves or their best version of themselves is going to take a higher thinking. It's going to be deliberately choosing the better, deliberately choosing the things that's going to keep you in the state of being or the state of mind of the person you intend to be. That's a continuous thing. If you continue to revert back to, sailing the paper ships with those kids, then that's where you stay. You may physically move, but you're going to end up right back there. So something has to evolve. There has to be some type of bridge that you cross and some type of understanding or lesson that takes place. But says, listen, my intention is to, this is where people talk about having a big why. What's your why? What's your purpose? Like, why are you doing this? You just want to get a couple of cars, get a couple of houses, or are you trying to leave a legacy? In my particular case, I have, god babies and nieces and nephews. They need inspiration. They need guidance. They need someone to say, hey, try this, and work with them along the way. You think about how we were raised. So many families were raised with, one parent household, which means there's an imbalance. But we don't look at this imbalance. We just say, hey, we just, you did the best you can, what you got. And it's true, but there's still something missing. And it takes, it takes those both sides. It takes that mother and it takes that father to raise that child. And if you're only raised by the mother, then you're missing some qualities from a father. That's why the father's there. So you need those qualities. And I'm seeing more and more where, the young men and the young women can really use some of us, right? To, just, even if you're just a sounding board, to listen to their hearts, right? And offer a word of advice, so they have somewhere to turn to. So yeah, becoming like a child, I think, is important, because again, it's about the self-mastery, right? And at the same time, it's also, being a child or being a student, not always trying to flow in one specific. And if you listen to people carefully now, a lot of people talking more about vulnerability. Hey, I'm not trying to get out here and act like I have it all together. I'm still on the journey. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still developing. And that's the space that we're moving into. People understand this is not perfection. It's progress over perfection.
Yeah, it's mastery. It's mastery. Like I said, I learned mastery recently. What it is, it's a commitment to the journey of trying and failing and trying and fail and trying and fail. That's what mastery is all about. That's the journey. I see Teddy actually posted, put his comment on here. Teddy posted about, winning $1 million. He said, I'd be the bummiest millionaire you'd ever see. Collect the funds to a law firm and try to live off the interest. So that's what he said he'll do with $1 million. He'd be the bummiest millionaire you'd ever see. He'd collect the funds to a law firm and live off the interest. That's what my man said. All right, Teddy. Appreciate your comment, man. Thanks so much for sharing. And thanks for being part of course, a conversation at Confidence Factor. So what we're talking about, at the top of the hour is, unleash your riches. What would you do with $1 million? And this was a 2-part series. We started kind of the context around people winning the lottery and why so many people may have lost the money. And also, what would you do? Like, hey, would you invest it? Would you spend it? What would you do with the money? We had a conversation around that. And this time around, we really explored the other aspect of, why people really lose the money. And as we know that whatever you don't manage, you will lose. And so what we're saying in this conversation is that one of the biggest reasons why they lose it is because life management is about mind management. They don't have the right mindset to sustain that level of wealth set. And so we talked about the thermostat, and that, the thermostat represents kind of like your mindset. If it's set to a certain temperature or degree, if the outside temperature goes up, your internal regulator will help you to self-sabotage. And that's why people deal with a lot of even things like imposter syndrome. People start feeling like imposter syndrome because why? I remember what's the guy's name who wrote Creed, the director of Creed. He was sharing how he was dealing with imposter syndrome because he was waiting for the shoe to drop. He couldn't believe that he was having this kind of success because he didn't believe internally there was a story that he may not be enough. And so, that's the internal regulator. That's the thing that's always trying to regulate you back to whatever, your true identity or feelings about yourself. Even if your work is great, even if you have great expression, there are people that still walk around internally feeling like, oh man, I'm an imposter. Because if you guys really knew that I really don't feel good about myself, you really knew that I, those stories that I tell and the meanings that I give to life. And that's what happens oftentimes. So anyway, we are at 7:32. We have an inspiration injection. I want to thank you guys so much for being here with us in Confidence Faction, joining this conversation. So Lamont, Bobby, take us out, man.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys. We hope something was said that will help you that would inspire you and encourage you and move in the direction of your hopes, goals, dreams, and aspirations. Remember, this is CF Talks. This is where we have heart-level conversations that lead to transformation. Tonight's inspiration injection comes from Think and Grow Rich. It simply says that if the first plan which you adopt does not work, replace it with a new plan. Replace it. If the new plan fails to work, replace it. In turn with still another, and so on, until you find a plan which does work. That's so right. You, as Les Brown says, you guys have greatness in you. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your plan. Stay inspired. And like we say here at Confidence Factor, in everything that you do, make sure that you keep it.
Keep it heart level.
High level.
We'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.